It is all about your attitude.
Fuck you, I got my mail.
Trying to outsmart the law has its consequences, and when a suspect mistakenly runs into the wrong cop, getting tased or tackled is just the start of their misery.
Turn on your gut now. Turn on your gut. Turn on your gut. Turn around.
So, from a reckless teenager getting tased in the middle of a parking lot to a hoodlum getting rocked with a deadly right hook, join me as I reveal what happens when suspects come face to face with the wrong cop. Number 1, naughty teenagers. This happened back in 2023 in Young Park, New Mexico, and what was supposed to be a routine patrol for the officer turned into a high-voltage drama with a naughty teenager. The cop pulled up to a parking lot where some youngsters were apparently having a car meet. All right, cool, nothing wrong with that. The cop just stepped out and told them to be safe and not pull off any dumb stunts. But just as he's about to get back in his car, a bottle of liquor comes flying and smacks his windshield. He immediately steps out and walks towards the teenagers, asking them who chucked the bottle. After some looking around, he locates the teenager who was trying to escape. But the cop isn't about to let him off the hook so easily and manages to tase the teenager, who shuts down and falls hard on the pavement. The police quickly cuffed him and threw him in the back of the police car. And when you think about it, there was absolutely no need to do what he did. He just made his life so much harder by getting booked for trying to assault a police officer, damaging a police vehicle, and attempting to escape. Number 2, instant karma. Spitting on people has consequences, and even though a lot of people think this officer used excessive force, I think the beating was a well-deserved education. When police finally located a delinquent who spent the afternoon spitting on people, it was obvious they weren't about to let him off without a good beating. The confrontation immediately results in an intense chase, with one of the officers even missing a taser attempt. However, after running for about half a minute, the wannabe bad boy decides to take the cop on. From the looks of it, the officer looks less like a cop and more like a boxer. He effortlessly tackles the suspect and rocks him with a series of deadly strikes. When backup finally arrives on the scene, it's game over for the suspect as he's cuffed and probably about to face some serious jail time. Number 3, got what he deserved. Shots fired. I repeat, shots fired. This next footage might be a bit disturbing, but it shows a man, clearly out of his mind, going around Long Beach, stabbing people with a screwdriver. Before the cops even arrive, this maniac has already stabbed 2 adults and an old man who falls flat on the floor while holding a child. At this point, it's obvious this guy isn't right in the head, and I think it doesn't take the cops long to figure that out either. They follow him around for a couple of blocks and keep telling him to throw away the screwdriver and comply. But I have no clue what this guy is thinking. I mean, what does he even expect at this point? He's already assaulted 3 people with a screwdriver. Are the cops just supposed to let him walk away? It's a long and intense showdown as the cops follow the man through a residential neighborhood. But when this mentally disturbed perp gets a bit too ahead of himself and tries to enter a house, a cop opens fire, shooting 2 rounds at him, with one of them hitting him on his upper body. It's all cooperation after that because, well, let's face it, all these tough guys seem to cooperate really well after getting shot or tased. Number 4, armed robber gets slammed on the pavement. This is one of these videos that could have gone either way, to be honest. I'm glad it ended in just an arrest. But considering how this robber was armed and also tried stealing the officer's weapon, he's lucky he didn't get whopped. This is first-hand footage from the cop's body cam, and you can see how they managed to get the victim to comply as he's in the middle of robbing a gas station. Just as the cop is about to cuff him, this dude literally rams the officer and tries to escape, but unlucky for him, he's facing RoboCop. And credits to the officer for maintaining his composure throughout this alteration, because there's even a moment when the perp tries to snatch his handgun. Anyway, just as the robber thinks he's gotten away, tackled by the cop, and it looks like something straight out of an action film. The officers quickly cuffed the suspect, and I'm no expert, but I'm sure this guy's going to spend the next few months in prison. Number 5, K9S are technically also cops, right? This dude was recklessly speeding through a neighborhood in a stolen car, with the cops closing in on his tail. This wasn't caught on camera, but as soon as he makes a right turn, he brutally slams the stolen car bumper first into another car, causing some serious damage to both vehicles. He's off again, but this time he's on foot, and with several officers chasing him down, We have ourselves a classic police encounter, folks. Believe it or not, this guy actually ends up evading several cops after hopping a fence and hiding in a random house. But everything changes when the police bring out their bad boy. This K9 seems eager right off the bat, and as soon as he's unhooked, he runs to the suspect. He hops another fence. The hilarious but action-packed chase finally ends when Mr. K9 once again catches up to him and scares him into surrendering. What did we learn from this? Never mess with cops who have K9S at number 6, roof rage. If I had to guess, the guy in this footage probably had some mental problems because there's no apparent reason why he was doing so much. The neighbors phoned the police and told them how this guy was on their roof with a knife, just going berserk. When the cops finally showed up, he started hurling bricks at them and even threatened them multiple times before begging the officers to shoot him and end his life. I don't exactly know how, but he eventually ends up on a wall and keeps doing weird stuff before almost tripping and falling face first on the sidewalk. That's when the cops finally decide they've had enough and tase him. Now you'd think that would be enough to end the drama, but nope, he continues to resist and, believe it or not, even tries to bite off an officer's thumb while throwing punches at them. A couple of minutes pass, and that's when the cops finally use force to get this crazy dude in cuffs. Number 7, a pure whacker. It's funny how things change so drastically when a real cop shows up. A young officer is in the middle of a traffic stop when a marked police vehicle pulls up from behind and asks him what he's up to. The supposed undercover cop tells the officers how he just pulled over this car doing 120 in a 40-mile zone. Until now, the cops aren't too concerned, but when they ask him where all his police gear is, he conveniently says he doesn't have it on him and that he's headed to the court to pick it up. I mean, firstly, who heads to the court to pick their gear? And secondly, whenever a cop tells you to hang tight, there's a 99% chance you're about to end up in cuffs. As the suspicion grows, the cops ultimately tell this dude to hang tight and eventually put him in the back of their SUV. The way this dude folds under pressure is just hilarious. He comes clean and tells them he isn't a real cop, and this whacker definitely messed with the wrong cop since he could literally smell something off from the very get-go. Plus, this kid is such a bad liar. I mean, he claims to be a cop for 3 years, and he's 18 right now. So not only did he become a cop when he was just 15 years old, but he supposedly had a wife waiting for him at home as well. Number 8, falling with style. In case you're wondering why this guy refused to follow directions, let's just say he was doomed from the very beginning. The cops can be seen directing traffic, and as they approach this dude's vehicle, he immediately speeds off. An officer rushes to his vehicle, gets in, and finally catches up to the suspect. As he steps out, we can see another cop trying to detain the man, but it seems like this guy is on a different planet. He can be seen casually walking away from the cops like he didn't almost run one of them over, but this officer isn't having it. As soon as he's near the suspect, he fires his taser, and the way this dude falls is just hilarious. And while I'm pretty sure he'll wake up with a big bump on the back of his head, he got exactly what he deserved. Oh, and what did I mean by him being doomed from the start? Well, it turns out he was under the influence, and that's why he didn't stop. Serves him right. That's exactly what happens when you come across a cop who doesn't mess about the law. Number 9, did shopping at Walmart just get harder? Seriously, as if shopping at Walmart wasn't already hard enough. Now you have to watch out for a crazy lady with a knife trying to kill you. But trying to win a standoff against a cop who's warned you about 25 times to drop the weapon? I mean, this lady must know this can't end well. Oh, did you know she actually entered Walmart carrying a brick? Yep, she threatened people with a brick until she managed to get her hands on a knife. And I'm glad the police showed up on time because this could have turned really ugly. The cop didn't even waste a second and immediately tased her to defuse the situation. The woman was later arrested and probably had to spend the next couple of months in jail. But yeah, I appreciate the cop for taking charge of the situation and not waiting for any sort of aggression before making a move. Number 10, make it double. This cop is not afraid to bring out Mr. Sparky, and for shoplifters who think they can casually evade the law, he's the worst guy to mess with. The video starts with a young girl who's being interrogated by the cops, and she's entitled enough to think that it's okay to exit the scene like nothing even happened. The cops immediately tackle her, and as she's lying flat on her stomach, they try to cuff her, but she just doesn't comply. She's been warned multiple times, but since it's clearly not working, the officer whips out Mr. Sparky and tases the shoplifter twice before finally putting her in cuffs. But this is just the start of the scene. She apparently had an accomplice, and one of the officers spotted him trying to get away, and that's when things got intense. 2 officers can be seen in the body cam, chasing the second shoplifter, also warning him, but by now, it's pretty obvious these suspects have no intention of listening. Through a thick bush, the officer catches up and connects once again with Mr. Sparky doing all the work. For this encounter, both these amateur shoplifters will think twice before robbing anyone. Number 11. Making a gangster cry. Watching this guy tear up after being caught will make your day. It all starts when an officer walks up to this dude's car and asks him why he just went over the curb. Honestly speaking, the guy's pretty cool at the start and tells the cop it happens a lot since he has terrible lights. Anyway, as they're chatting, the officer spots some weed on the guy's lap and asks him to step out. Backup arrives, and both the guy and the passenger are escorted out and cuffed. I wonder what got into this dude's head, but all of a sudden, he decided to dash away from the cop while being cuffed. And you know that just can't end well. As he's sprinting away, he embarrassingly falls face first into the ground and starts crying his eyes out. As the police officers lift him, this grown adult is literally crying like a baby, yelling at officers how they're doing illegal things by hurting him. Well, bud, when you try to act tough with seasoned police officers, that's exactly what you get in return. And it wasn't just weed they found in his vehicle. This wannabe gangster also had an unlicensed firearm with the serial number scraped off. Number 12. Trying to bite an officer can't end well. This next clip is really interesting because the suspect actually has a warrant for her arrest. She's apparently being charged for domestic battery after trying to run over her ex-husband, and after watching this video, I think it'll be safe to say the guy dodged a bullet. Anyway, as soon as the lady parks her car in the garage, an officer follows her and tells her to get out of the vehicle so they can talk. The woman refuses to comply and even attempts to bite the cop's hand. I mean, I hope she realizes she's just making the situation worse by attempting to injure a cop. The woman is super aggressive throughout the confrontation, but when backup shows up, things quickly change. And I will admit the first cop was trying to keep things gentle by repeatedly asking the woman to step out of the vehicle. Backup, however, was probably short on time and yanked the woman out of the car and cuffed her up. She was then taken outside the garage, where she was interrogated for a short while. But when cops realized this woman was only speaking gibberish, they threw her in the vehicle and got done with the job. Number 13. What was this guy even thinking? I don't think it can get more embarrassing than this, to be honest. I mean, what was this guy even thinking? He tried to grab an officer's gun while being cuffed inside an interrogation room. Did he not know there would be backup on the spot? So the suspect seen in the video was brought in to be interrogated for a murder that took place in the area. But while he was being cuffed by an officer, he tried to grab his weapon, which resulted in an absolute frenzy in the interrogation room. Several cops rushed in as the officer tried to get the perp to let go of the firearm, but when all else failed, one of the cops tased the suspect to de-escalate the situation. When the judge heard about what this guy pulled off at the police station, his bond was set at $1.5 million. Yep, 1.5 mil. And even though this guy tried to get slick with the wrong group of cops, I'm not sure how that officer carried his firearm in the interrogation room. There's actually a strict rule in police stations across the country that prohibits a cop from taking their firearm into the interrogation room. Either way, I'm glad this guy got his backside handed to him. Number 14. An undercover hero. This video is the stuff of dreams. I love watching criminals get justice, and what's better than the look of regret on their faces when it's instant. This next clip is from Brazil, and you can see a shooter pull up near a school for a robbery in broad daylight. As soon as he approaches some pedestrians, he whips out his pistol and points it at them, yelling at them to give him their belongings. It probably seems like an inside-out job for the suspect at this point, but what he doesn't know is that there is an off-duty cop in the crowd. You can see the exact moment the undercover cop pulls out her firearm from her purse and shoots the suspect point blank. He gets hit in the chest and immediately goes down. Talk about instant karma! The woman then kicks away his weapon and gets him to roll over on his stomach, further holding him down with her foot to prevent him from getting any funny ideas. After her unbelievable heroics, the woman was promoted to federal deputy. Now that's what I call a happy ending. Number 15, stabbed officer fights back. This footage isn't for the faint-hearted because it involves a crazy woman with a knife who ends up doing some serious damage. It's just another day at the office for this cop as she pulls up to a house to do a routine checkup. She knocks on the door, and as she's waiting for the suspect to answer the door, a crazy woman with a knife comes out of nowhere and stabs the officer. Despite being stabbed, the officer still doesn't open fire on the woman and warns her not to pick up the knife. But I guess this woman isn't right in the head, and as she's about to go in for the knife, the officer fires 2 rounds at her, with both of them connecting. But to everyone's surprise, this woman still doesn't go down. She then charges at another officer who has no other option but to seriously injure her to prevent more damage. The only reason why the cop survived is because she's a certified badass. Despite getting stabbed, she didn't freak out and kept her composure, handling the situation perfectly. And as for the suspect, well, that's what happens when you mess with the wrong cop. Number 16. Does meth really make you invincible? After the police got a call about a possible case of domestic violence, they pulled up to the apartment to check things out. This big dude answers the door, and while he's pretty civil at first, he totally freaks out as cops are about to cuff him. He tries to escape from the front door, but a cop daringly fights back and tries to hold him in while another officer shoots him with a taser. Despite just getting tased, this guy runs into another officer and shoves him out on the porch. And during all this, his shorts also fall off, so it's kind of funny. Anyway, the dude needs to be tased again for him to finally go down and give up. But it just makes you wonder, does meth really make people invincible? Because it took 3 cops to take down this methed out suspect, but all of them were badasses because they handled it perfectly. Not only did they tase him twice, but they fought back to remind this guy who was in charge. I can't help but imagine what would have happened if a bunch of rookies were sent in for this job. It would have almost been impossible to detain this guy. Number 17. What could go wrong with headbutting a cop? He just added a charge on top of a charge. This idiot was being escorted to the courtroom when on his way, he headbutted an officer. The guards immediately put this guy in a chokehold, and the officer who got struck lifted up his legs to take him back to the room. Now, there's no video of what really happened inside, but I'm sure you can imagine some justice was served. In fact, this guy actually arrived in the courtroom with a couple of bruises, and that's a lesson for every other suspect out there. Don't mess with badass cops. Plus, I guess the cops were wise not to give this guy a beating in front of the camera. Number 18. Child predator gets dealt with. To be fair, the cops gave this guy plenty of warnings to ditch the knife. But instead of actually listening and taking their advice, this guy thought he was actually in a position to boss the cops around. The officers ultimately had to deal with this predator with force, and if you ask me, that's the only way to deal with them. 2 less lethal shots are fired at him, but since he's wrapped up in a blanket, using a pillow as a shield, it's not enough to rock him. One officer ultimately has to tase him, but even that isn't enough to get him to drop the knife. And well, that just leaves officers with one option. They all storm him, and even though he manages to slice one of the officers, it doesn't do any real damage thanks to his protective gear. The predator is then smacked by officers for failing to comply, and honestly, I couldn't be any prouder of these guys. Number 19. A literal countdown. Some people just don't know how to handle authority, to be honest. That too, when they've just stolen something. This woman can be seen walking with a crate of beer she stole from a nearby store when officers pull up beside her and try to detain her. She wastes around 5 minutes talking about how they can't arrest her since she's an elderly citizen and a woman. The cops aren't having any of that though, and when they slam her against the car to cuff her, the woman actually starts counting down. She repeatedly says she's giving them 2 seconds to let her go before, well, I have no idea what she had in store. Even after being cuffed, she continues kicking the cops before she's finally thrown into the back of the car. It's satisfying when entitlement backfires though. Number 20. What a beautiful strike. This cop seriously looks like he trains. Everything about that strike was just perfect. I mean, the hip rotation, the feet positioning, everything was spot on. Anyway, the suspect is clearly out of his league here as he tries to intimidate the cops with his aggressive behavior. But this hulk of a police officer isn't having it, and as he pulls up close to the perp, he shoves him and asks him to quit clowning around. The suspect doesn't listen, and that's when the cop unleashes a powerful strike, nearly knocking this guy out. This is what I love about badass cops. They aren't afraid to knock you out if you're out of line. We need more guys like him. So that's it for today's video, folks. What do you think? What was your favorite moment in this video? And have you ever seen a cop humble a suspect? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting content in the future.